no longer rely on others to defend our Arctic security or to fuel our economy. We're taking full responsibility for defending our sovereignty, and we are unleashing a range of new economic opportunities for the over 140,000 Northerners who will benefit from stronger, more connected communities, more opportunities, and a higher standard of living. La première tâche du gouvernement est d'assurer votre sécurité. Pour y parvenir, en juin dernier, notre nouveau gouvernement s'est lancé dans une mission ambitieuse visant à rebâtir, réarmer et réinvestir dans les forces armées canadiennes. Le recrutement dans les forces armées a augmenté depuis juin de 13%. Nous sommes en voie d'atteindre la cible de 2% de l'OTAN cette année. And as part of our plan to rebuild, rearm, and reinvest in the Canadian Armed Forces, we must ensure that the women and men who serve have not only the presence, but also the reach to defend every corner of this region. To that end, we are building 4 new northern operational support hubs and nodes in Whitehorse, in Resolute Bay, in Rankin Inlet, and in Cambridge Bay. And we are upgrading our national defense infrastructure in Yellowknife, Inuvik, Iqaluit, and Goose Bay. These locations are at the heart of our mission to defend our territory. What they'll do is they will enable the forces to deploy aircraft across all remote areas of the Arctic. Nous construisons des centres militaires d'une importance cruciale, qui sont également essentiels pour renforcer la sécurité des communautés. Ces stations permettent d'intervenir plus rapidement en cas de recherche et de sauvetage, des catastrophes naturelles et d'urgence, même dans les régions les plus isolées. These defense investments will strengthen our military's presence, and at the same time, what they will require is new energy infrastructure, new broadband, new telecommunication services, new wastewater services. And what that means is as we build these military operations, we can transform and benefit the surrounding communities. The combination of these defense investments with the nation-building projects we're announcing today will strengthen Arctic security and open new economic opportunities while connecting communities. I'll go back to Diefenbaker. He asked Canadians to reimagine the potential of the North with what he called his Roads to Resources program. He envisioned new airstrips, a railroad to Great Slave Lake, and a winding man-made line carved through this rugged terrain. Now, since then, back in the late 50s, since then, as the people of the North know all too well, climate change has only reinforced the need for action. Isolated communities in the McKenzie Valley rely on a seasonal winter road and summer resupply barges, which are both becoming increasingly unreliable, with melting permafrost in the winter and low water levels in the McKenzie in the summer. So right now, there is no road open reliably in all seasons. Ever since I was a kid in Fort Smith, I've been hearing about the possibility of the McKenzie Valley Highway. And I'm not that young. For decades, there have been a series of false starts and endless assessments. That record ends today. Today, we're taking up the McKenzie Valley Highway at our major projects office. This summer, we will start construction. The first phase of the all-season highway will stretch more than 800 kilometers from Wrigley to Norman Wells. The second phase will extend all the way to Inuvik. When complete, This vital artery will link Yellowknife and Inuvik, and it'll cut almost in half the time it takes to drive between them. The new highway will be resilient both to the changing seasons and the changing climate, providing year-round access to isolated communities, allowing critical supplies and medicines to reach people in remote areas. It will also unlock immense potential for mining, from copper to zinc to critical minerals. And we will build this highway in partnership with territorial and Indigenous governments so that the benefits promised nearly 70 years ago are felt in the communities directly. And to be even more specific about how we're moving, we will start construction of the Oscar Creek Bridge relocation, the Christina Creek realignment, and Highway 1 targeted resurfacing, all beginning this summer. En plus de relier les communautés par voie terrestre, nous les relierons également par voie aérienne. Nous modernisons les pistes à Rankin Inlet et améliorerons l'aéroport d'Inuvik afin de permettre l'atterrissage d'avions plus gros, de réduire les coûts et d'assurer des aéroports fiables et pleinement opérationnels pour les communautés qui en dépendent. As we connect our communities to each other, we also will connect them to the world. Now, despite our unique strategic advantage in Canada, our unique strategic advantage in bordering 3 oceans and connecting those oceans, we don't have a deepwater port on the Arctic Ocean. Grays Bay Port and Road will change all of that. We will build a new deepwater port at Grays Bay in Nunavut and a 230-kilometer all-season road connecting it to the territory's border. This will help unlock mineral resources and enable their easy export. We'll also work in partnership with the Kitkmiyot Inuit Association to realize the transformative potential of this decades-long dream, and to connect the Grays Bay Port and Road to the wider north, including Yellowknife. We're going to refer to the Major Projects Office a new Arctic Economic and Security Corridor that will build a 400-kilometer all-season road through the Slave Geological Province to Nunavut's border. So you put that all together, we will have the first all-season road connecting Nunavut to our national highway system. Nunavut connected to our national highway system. We will have an enablement of new resource exploration and development in the mineral-rich Slave Geological Province of the Northwest Territories in Nunavut. We will have open access to new export markets so we can realize more of the potential of these multiple new trade deals that Canada is securing abroad. Il ne s'agit pas seulement de ce que nous bâtissons, mais aussi de la manière dont nous le bâtissons. Nous bâtissons de façon durable, en réduisant les émissions et investissant dans l'avenir axé sur l'énergie propre. Nous bâtissons en solidarité avec les travailleurs canadiens, en créant des centaines de milliers de carrières bien rémunérées. Et enfin, nous bâtissons en partenariat avec les gouvernements territoriaux et autochtones pour offrir des avantages économiques indéniables à la population du Nord. This is a generational plan to build and connect the North, to bring security, prosperity, and opportunity to workers and families. Now, to sustain all of that growth, we need clean, reliable, and affordable power. Fuel prices in the North can reach 6 to 10 times the levels of the rest of Canada. This just reinforces the need to transition to cleaner options. So we are going to unlock the North's enormous hydropower. In November, we referred the Iqaluit Nunavut hydro project to the Major Projects Office. This is Nunavut's first 100% Inuit-owned hydroelectricity project. It can save nearly $2 billion in diesel costs over the next 50 years, while providing that reliable, affordable, emissions-free power to people in the Arctic. Today, we're going to take another step forward by referring the Taltson Hydro Expansion Project to the MPO. Taltson will add 60 megawatts to the existing system, doubling the capacity right here in the Northwest Territories, creating a unified hydro grid that links 11 communities, powers 70% of the territory's population with reliable, clean electricity. You know, when you bring together the major projects that we're referring, they represent around $10 billion in investment, will create more than 10,000 jobs during their construction, and that is separate from the scale of the investment and the jobs created from the defense investments. More fundamentally, what we're doing is creating projects that are, if you will, force multipliers. Their construction will unleash new career opportunities, higher paychecks, faster trips, stronger communities, and they will make large investments possible by connecting the Canadian North and Arctic. Our plan to defend, connect, and build the North will reinforce Canada's strategic autonomy. That independence will also be bolstered by the new trade and defense partnerships that we are striking with trusted partners. Ce soir, je parlerai pour la Norvège afin d'approfondir notre coopération en matière de défense, de commerce et de minéraux critiques avec nos alliés nordiques. Ma visite comprendra des exercices militaires conjoints visant à renforcer la coopération opérationnelle et la préparation entre les principaux alliés dans le cadre de la défense de notre territoire. Et la semaine prochaine, je rencontrerai le Premier ministre Starmer du Royaume-Uni pour discuter du renforcement de notre défense collective. Le fondement de notre souveraineté, de notre indépendance et de notre force réside dans ce que nous construisons chez nous ensemble. So to conclude, when John Diefenbaker, all those years ago, set out to reimagine the North, he rightly envisioned that it required more than a stronger economy. It required a more secure border. But ultimately, it required a future where Canadians have, and I quote, control of their own destiny. Là où nous sommes maîtres chez nous. And today, we are taking major steps to realize that vision, to take control and to build the true North strong and free together. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Merci, Monsieur le Premier ministre. Nous allons maintenant passer aux questions. We'll do 20 minutes of question. Première question. First question.
Bonjour, Monsieur le Premier ministre. Bien sûr que je vais revenir sur cette annonce. Valérie Gavache de Radio-Canada. Mais d'abord, j'aimerais qu'on fasse le point sur ces frappes sur la base aérienne d'Ali Al-Salem au Koweït. Il y a le camp Canada qui aurait été touché par ces frappes-là. Je voulais d'abord savoir si vous pouviez nous confirmer ces frappes-là et nous dire pourquoi vous n'avez pas informé les Canadiens au moment où elles se sont produites.
Merci pour votre question. Premier point, et le point le plus important, est que tous les membres de forces canadiennes dans la région sont sains et saufs. Okay? Ça, c'est le premier point. Deuxièmement, comme vous le savez, mais je vais répéter, le Canada ne s'engage pas dans les actions dans la région, surtout dans les actions offensives dans la région. Et on va informer quand il y a des nouvelles. C'est la responsabilité de moi et le ministre de la Défense nationale.
And if you can answer in English also. If you can confirm in English if this attack happened and why you didn't inform Canadian before?
Well, I mean, I'm not the only spokesperson for the government, but I just confirm that Canadian forces the members of the Canadian forces are all safe and sound. I reinforce, as I said in French, what you know, which is that we are not engaged in these actions of the U.S. and Israel. We're not engaged in offensive actions, and we will not be engaged in those actions.
Concernant l'annonce d'aujourd'hui,
Oui.
c'est quand même une annonce qui est extrêmement concrète pour le Nord. Quel message vous voulez envoyer à la veille justement de cette visite en Norvège à vos alliés, tant des pays nordiques que de l'OTAN, en faisant cette annonce-là aujourd'hui?
Oui, merci. C'est OK. La visite, l'annonce aujourd'hui et les actions aujourd'hui renforcent notre capacité à une échelle extraordinaire, si je peux dire comme ça, notre capacité de défendre le Canada, tout le Canada. Et alors, c'est vachement important, les annonces aujourd'hui, y compris d'autres investissements dans nos forces armées, premièrement. Deuxièmement, alors, on prend plus de responsabilités chez nous. Okay? Ça, c'est fondamental. C'est un des grands messages aujourd'hui. Deuxièmement, on va travailler plus. Nous allons avoir une plus étroite collaboration avec nos alliés norvégiens parce qu'il y a la géographie, premièrement. Deuxièmement, nous avons une frontière, par exemple, de 3000 km avec le Danemark, par exemple. OK. C'est une bonne idée d'avoir plus de coopération entre nous, mais y compris tous les pays norvégiens. Il y a expertise, il y a la possibilité ou la nécessité d'avoir plus de coordination. Alors, nous six avec Canada, nous prenons plus de responsabilités pour, en anglais, on dit le flank de l'Ouest, la frontière de l'Ouest de l'OTAN. Et depuis le commencement de l'OTAN, 95% ou plus de temps, l'OTAN est concentrée sur la frontière de l'Est. Maintenant, dans un monde de plus en plus dangereux, il faut concentrer, surtout pour le Canada, sur nos frontières et la frontière de l'Ouest de l'OTAN. Alors, par conséquent, on travaille avec plus étroite collaboration avec nos partenaires norvégiens. Ça marche?
Prochaine question. Next question.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister. David Baxter with the Canadian
Yep.
Press. What's your level of concern right now about broader economic damage, be it in Canada or globally, with the war in Iran and oil price shocks that we've been seeing over the last week?
Yeah. Well, this is an important question, something we're tracking very closely. The longer this goes on, the greater the disruptions in energy markets, and you're right, in oil markets. Very importantly, natural gas markets. 20% of global LNG supply is now trapped in the Gulf. So that will have knock-on effects, particularly in Asia. We are seeing the implications of this for fertilizer, for example. So there is ultimately down the chain around the world potential impacts in fertilizers, food prices, planting. Some other sectors, critical minerals, development related to. Anyways, there are a series. The longer it goes on, the greater the dislocation, the greater knock-on effects, the greater global economic impacts, without question. And from a Canadian perspective, We have strengths, many strengths, including the fact that we are a net energy exporter. So there is some offset to Canada because of this. But a world where the global economy is slower, that affects us. A world where gas prices are higher, gas prices are affected by global markets, that's an immediate challenge for individuals, so if it stays up. And also a world where, I'm going to simplify it, but the cost of money, financial conditions are tighter, interest rates are higher, stock markets are lower. That also has knock-on effects. You know, we start from a position, so we are watching this closely. We are working at several dimensions to respond. One is directly with respect to the conflict, talking to allies, partners, other countries in the region, a wide range of active participants and interested parties, if I can put it that way, to try to contribute to the conditions that can lead to a de-escalation of hostilities. So that's number one. Secondly, working with particularly the G7 in terms of providing some relief to energy markets, but that needs to be kept into context. The scale of the disruption to energy markets is much bigger than what can be offset through, for example, the release of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Making sure, thirdly, that Canada is supplying everything it can to commodity markets, to energy markets. And then fourth, is moving forward with our economic plan, delivering tax cuts for Canadians. It's great to see the legislation finally making it through for the budget through the House of Commons, delivering on projects like this where we are masters in our own home. In other words, and I'll finish on this, what the challenges in the Middle East, what the war in the Middle East reinforces. The world's more dangerous and divided. We need to protect our territory. That's what we're doing. Secondly, it reinforces that we can be hit from shocks from abroad, economic shocks, your question. We need to invest at home and be strong at home. That's what we're doing. And it also reinforces that we need all forms of energy in order to be resilient. So yes, oil and gas, and we're developing those in a responsible way, but also clean energy. And part of today's announcement is to finally get the North off of diesel, whose prices are going up and are already much more expensive than they are south of 60, if I can put it that way, and to clean, reliable energy.
And just to follow up on that uncertainty, of course, we just talking about the missile strike on the base in Kuwait, the strike on the base in Kuwait. Canadians are seeing the effects of the war here at home with the price of the pump going up and up and up. And it's been reported that after this trip is concluded, you're going to be on vacation for the next week. What's your message to Canadians who are worried about just the state of everything going on, the uncertainty, as you're going to be less publicly visible after this trip is done?
I'll be, first off, it doesn't actually work out to a week, it's the first thing. Secondly, I'll be working through this weekend with the military exercises in Norway, meeting with our partners, meeting with Chancellor Merz of Germany. I'll be meeting the UK Prime Minister on Monday. I will be having a series of conversations during the week. I will be as visible as needed and as connected as always. As well, I would reinforce that one of the strengths of this government is we have a very strong cabinet. And one of the, I would like to think, one of my characteristics as a prime minister is I give authority to my ministers. So there's a reason why you hear a lot from the Minister of National Defense, from the Minister of Foreign Affairs, from the Minister of Public Safety, because they are very much on the front lines of these issues as much as I am. Thank you.
Next question. Question, Kissing.
Judy Trin with CTV News. Prime Minister, your office says you will have an audience with King Charles following your meeting with Keir Starmer. The Treaty 6 chiefs spoke to King Charles about their concern that Premier Danielle Smith has not denounced Alberta separation. Is that a topic that you will also broach with the King?
Well, let me say a couple of things that, if I may, Judy. Which is first is that His Majesty, in all of my experience, takes an intense interest in the rights of Indigenous peoples, Treaty 6 territory, Treaty 7 territory, across the Arctic. He will be very interested, first and foremost, just by his nature, I know this, in terms of what we're talking about today, the progress that's being made, what's coming next, the impact of climate change on the North. These issues are front and center and constant for him. The second thing is that, it is, there will be a form of readout of the discussion that we have. I don't want to prejudge the discussion that we have. He had quite a fulsome discussion with the Treaty 6 chiefs, I know, in the last 48 hours, and there are many subjects for him and I to raise. Thank you.
Follow-up.
In regards to your announcement today and this focus on defense investments and this strategy, can you give us a little insight as to why there is not more investment on housing, schooling, education for people in the North, for Indigenous communities that lack these resources? And when you head over to Norway and you meet with the Nordic 5, you will see that they have fantastic housing. Nuuk has 6 hospitals. They are Arctic communities. Why is it that Canada doesn't have those resources?
Well, a couple of things. One, this is a very important question. So let me pick up a few aspects of it. First, we are making major investments in housing in the Arctic. I'll point to the example of the 700 homes in Nunavut that we announced 6 weeks ago. The construction of those as part of Build Canada Homes, additional housing here in the Northwest Territories. We're working with the territorial government on that. More will be needed and more will be delivered. Okay, so that's the first point. Second is, and there is a deficit. Maybe that should have been the first point, which is to acknowledge the infrastructure deficit that exists across the North and in the Arctic. And this government is determined to close that deficit meaningfully. So that's why within the first few days I was in Iqaluit. That's why we're here. That's why I was in Fort Smith a few months ago. And we're continuing to focus on closing those deficits. Some of the benefits of, for example, some of the benefits of what we're announcing today will be major additional infrastructure investments in the North, additional health facilities, additional wastewater facilities, telco, and schooling and beyond. And it's a weird term, but it's dual use because it's relevant both for the military personnel who come, but also for the communities. And if you look at the communities where these what are called network operating hubs or nodes, where they're going, these are in northern terms, quite large communities and have quite large spillover benefits. Your question's well motivated. We've got a big gap to make up. This government is focused on closing that gap, just like we're focused on closing the gap on the military side and our sovereignty as a whole.
Next question. Question question.
Hi, the MOU with Alberta set an April 1 deadline for agreements on carbon pricing, methane equivalency, and the Pathways carbon capture system. How are those talks going? Do you expect to meet the deadline? And how much closer is Canada to a new oil pipeline and the Pathways system?
All important questions. We're absolutely engaged in talks, I think, and they're all, I'm glad you raised all of those issues. There's a few more, but those issues are all absolutely interconnected. So you kind of can't solve one without solving the others, or I should say, finalize the agreements around one without the other. So we're engaged in moving those forward. I would point to the cooperation agreement, which we announced with Alberta in the last few days, as an example of there's goodwill on both sides. We're working forward, and we're committed to meet the deadline. More work to do, though, between now and then. Thank you.
Next question.
I just want to go back to this announcement, and I'd like more details on how you can guarantee construction on these major projects when they've only just been brought forward to the NPO. So if you could share some more details on that, and then just a little bit of information on what the cost of some of these major projects would be.
Okay. So in terms of, and there's a couple aspects of it. One is a project the scale of McKenzie Valley will have a series of approvals, environmental approvals, other approvals for various components. And I talked in terms of phase 1 and phase 2, but even within phase 1, as the Premier well knows, we talk about this a lot, actually. There's various components of phase 1, some of which are more ready than others in terms of process, in terms of rights holder participation and benefit from them. So we can move forward on those as we're finalizing environmental assessments and others for the other components. That's first thing. The second thing, I'm going to widen your question for a second because I want to raise a fundamentally important issue, which is that the scale of what we're talking about with the military investments, these network operating hubs and nodes, and these major projects is enormous. And so there's a need to sequence and augment the construction capacity in the north, right? So one of the things we collectively have to do is make sure, first and foremost, the people of the north are benefiting for the construction, they're engaged, they're in it, they're part of it, but also that the equipment is available, it's in the right place at the right time, and it's sequenced across a very vast land. So there is a huge project management element to all of this for each project, but then it as a whole. And then in terms of the dollar values of the projects, if I'm going to simplify, there's more detail in a backgrounder which you'll get, or if you haven't received it already, but I'm going to simplify that the military components of this, $32 billion plus a bit more for dual use runways, for example, in Rankin and others. So effectively $35 billion. Again, more detail will be provided out. But then if you look at across Taltson, McKenzie Valley, both legs, the Arctic corridor, including the port, it runs to north of $10 billion for all the components of it. Phase 1, phase 2, bringing everything back. If you think of everything ultimately being connected back here to Yellowknife, plus the ports, plus the hydro, which also gets connected back to Yellowknife. So it runs in that order of magnitude. At this stage, final point, which is that, as you say, well, let me just make the point. At this stage of the process, some of those estimates will become more refined because you're not at a final investment decision point, but those are the orders of magnitude.
We'll have time for one last question and follow-up. Dernière question, une question de suivi.
Hi, Prime Minister. Murray Brewster with CBC News.
Murray.
The large portion of today's funding is coming out of the envelope that was set aside for NORAD modernization.
Yes.
And you have a number of other projects that are going on under NORAD modernization. The initial estimate was $38 billion for NORAD modernization. Is there going to be a bigger bill for NORAD modernization?
I think the way I'd answer that is, first, absolutely right in terms of your premise of your question. And I'm going to observe, this wasn't your question, but there's a difference between setting aside money and actually getting the plans and actioning. And so it's not like announcing that we're going to modernize NORAD is the same thing as identifying these hubs and actually starting the RFP process and moving forward on them, which is what's necessary. The second point is from the threat environment is constantly evolving, and that's a threat environment that very much implicates NORAD, as the Minister of National Defense rightly says, our sort of continental shield defense. So we will be constantly updating what we need. Sometimes we won't need expensive systems that we thought we need because things have moved in a different direction. Sometimes we'll need new systems, and we'll be updating those through updates to the defense and strategy, but also through the budget process. So as of now, we're spending money. We are now allocating money that had been set aside for specific projects as described. If we have to do additional spending in those regards, additional fiscal cost, you will absolutely be the first to know. You'll be well, you might be amongst the first to understand it, right? Because this, you spend all the time on it. Okay, sorry.
And
second question.
one quick follow-up. You're meeting with the German Chancellor and the Norwegian Prime Minister. Do you expect to talk submarines?
Well, that's an important question. So we're in a phase of that process. The short answer is no, because Murray, the short answer is no, because we're at a phase in that process where the final bids have been submitted, and that runs through an equal process. This is very much. This is an important exercise this weekend. The Minister of National Defense will be with me, as will Secretary of State. This deeper coordination of our forces, lessons learned, how best to defend the Arctic in the new environment. Obviously, German Chancellor, myself, will have an opportunity to discuss broader geopolitical issues. I look forward to that. And as well, on Sunday morning, there is a meeting of effectively the Nordic Council, the 5 Nordic nations, plus Canada, and a series of opportunities to deepen cooperation there. So all of that is important, and for someone who asked about my holiday plans, I'd note that that's what I'm doing on Saturday and Sunday, and I hope you're going to be with me, so we can do it together. All right.
Thank you, Prime
Thank you very
Minister.
much. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. C'est ce qui m'a fait